Lori Vallow. The trial of doomsday cult mom Lori Vallow has started. Let's get into it. So day 1 through 5 was basically jury selection, and opening statements started on day 6. So Lindsay Blake started things off. She basically says that Lori Vallow did everything she did for money, sex, and power. She basically said that Tylee has a survivor's benefit and it's money, and Lori wanted it. She said JJ has security payments and Lori wanted it. And she said Tammy, of course, had her life insurance payout, and again, Lori wanted it. She started things off by talking about the condition that JJ and Tylee were found in when they were discovered on Chad Daybell's property. It was not good, as you know. So JJ was found duct taped with a bag over his head in his red pajamas still. And Tylee, of course, was so badly burned, she was unrecognizable, and she was dismembered and scattered around the pet cemetery on the property. She also said that Lori and Chad actually had names for themselves and believed they were religious figures. They called themselves James and Elena. She also talked about the rating system that the two believed in, basically saying that everyone ran from light to dark. And of course, the lighter you were, the more godly you were, the darker you were, the more close to Satan you were. This evolved into believing that dark people were actually called zombies and that the body actually had to be destroyed. She shared that Alex, Lori's brother, basically worshipped her, did anything for her. They called him her warrior. He quit his job and moved for her. He basically did whatever she wanted. Blake talked about the fact that Lori believed that she was supposed to get everyone ready for the second coming of Christ, and that there was going to be 144,000 people saved, and supposedly she was the one to recruit them. She also shared how they bought the wedding bands, or how Lori bought the wedding bands on Amazon before Tammy had even died. After Tammy died, Alex was heard saying, "I hope they don't make me the fall guy for this," and the next day he was also dead. Up next for opening statements was Lori's attorney, Jim Archibald. He basically tried to say that Lori was a loving and kind mother, that yes, she believed in religious things, including the end of day, but that it's a free country and she's allowed to believe those things. He also stressed that Lori apparently has an alibi for when the people were killed. Everywhere she was, she had someone with her at the time of their deaths. Day 6 also had 2 witnesses. The first one was Kay Woodside, JJ's grandmother. She had Charles's password to his email, and she's the one that discovered that Lori was buying wedding items before Tammy had even passed away. The second witness was Brandon Boudreau, who is Lori's niece Melanie's ex-husband. He shared that basically Melanie looked at Lori like a mom, then Melanie got extremely religious, and they ended up splitting. And soon after, someone took a shot at Brandon while he was driving home. He saw a Jeep parked on the side of the road, saw a gun point out with a silencer, shattered his window, and he called 911. Go check out day 7 and 8. Day 7 of the trial for doomsday cult mom Lori Vallow started off with this gentleman on the stand. So this is Detective Ray Hermosillo. He took the stand and had quite a bit to say. So Detective Hermosillo initially was involved because he was investigating the Jeep that was involved in the shooting of Brandon, who's Lori's ex-nephew-in-law. So he soon learned about the missing children, and he actually went to Lori's apartment on November 26th. When he got there, Lori apparently was not home, but he did see Alex and Chad outside loading stuff into a pickup truck. So he did stop. He says that Alex looked extremely nervous at the time speaking to him, and told him that supposedly JJ was with Kay, which of course he knew was not true because Kay was the one that called in the welfare check. So then he started speaking to Chad, and Chad basically let on that he hardly knew Lori, which of course he again knew wasn't true because he was already aware that they had just been married in Hawaii. Eventually, Chad gives the phone number and says that he didn't give the number initially because he was worried he was under investigation for something. So the very next day on November 27th, this detective, as well as his team, ended up getting search warrants for Lori's place, Alex's home, and also Melanie, Lori's niece's house. He said one thing that was really funny when he went to Lori's is there was no clothes in the home at all. It was just empty hangers. They also found a lot of disturbing items in the garage. There was guns and silencers and army knives and basically prepared kits like first aid bags and things like that. They also found at Alex's location some hazmat type suits and camouflage items. They also found a receipt at Lori's for a storage locker, so they did a search of that as well, and it ended up being pretty much all of JJ and Tylee's items, a lot of toys, bikes, things like that. They soon realized that Chad and Lori had taken off. They found out they were in Hawaii, so they flew to Hawaii and helped the police there serve them with court orders and search warrants. Detective Hermosillo also talked about the day that they had the search warrant on Chad's property, which was June 9th of 2020. They said that they arrived and supposedly Mark, who is Chad's son, answered the door and Chad was still sleeping. He said they went in, woke up Chad. Chad went out to the car, started making phone calls, and the detective noticed that Chad was looking at a certain area on the property. It was a tree and a pond area. So they started looking and digging in that area, and unfortunately, they did find a spot where the grass was shorter. They started digging, and they came across 3 large stones and then some wood paneling, and underneath that, they did find the body of JJ. He said that sadly they found JJ still in his red PJs with his nighttime pull-up still on. He had duct tape around his face. He had duct tape around his arms, holding his arms to his chest. He also had a plastic bag over his head when they found him. Go check out part 2 to see what else they found on the property. This is part 2 of day 7 of the trial of Lori Vallow, the Doomsday Cult Mom. Detective Ray Hermosillo is on the stand. He has just told the jurors basically that they found JJ on the property of Chad Daybell. While they're uncovering this, Chad Daybell has been over at his daughter's house, and he all of a sudden leaves in a hurry, driving in his vehicle, so the officers ended up chasing him down and put him into custody. After this, they go back to the search on Chad's property, and unfortunately, they head to the pet cemetery where they find a lot of charred bones and burnt flesh remains scattered throughout the yard. He did share as well that the odor was so strong, police had to take turns uncovering things, and they did eventually find Tylee's skull. Apparently, at this point, it was the first time Lori had showed any emotion during court. They had to actually take a quick break because she was so upset, and she did try to waive her right of being in the courtroom, and the judge declined it, and she had to stay. This must have been the hardest part for the jury since the trial started. At this point, they did show pictures of the bodies, including Chad Daybell's wife's autopsy pictures. They did show Tylee, her remains, and they also showed pictures of JJ. That ended day 7 of the trial, and day 8 began with a cross-examination. Once that was finished, we were introduced to this fellow who is Jared Wilmore. He actually works at the jail and he oversees it. He's also in charge of the phone calls and conversations that the inmates have with friends and family. So this fellow introduces a phone call between Chad and Lori, and it was during the investigation on Chad's property. So he calls Lori at the jail to tell her that they're investigating the property and doing a search. She asks if they're searching the home, and he says, no, it's the property. And she says, is there anything I can do? And he just tells her to pray. The next person to take the stand is Lieutenant Joe Powell. He comes up and talks about Tammy Daybell, who is Chad Daybell's ex-wife that had died apparently in her sleep. It was ruled natural at first, but he did some investigating. He went and got her prescription drugs and things like that, and apparently she was in good health, no high blood pressure, so they did decide to exhume her body and do another autopsy. Day 9 of the trial, they introduced Lori's friend Melanie Gibb, who is a very important witness. Hit follow for more, and I'll be posting day 9's trial shortly.
Disturbing details tonight in the Lori Vallow murder trial. The cult mother accused of killing her 2 youngest children. For the first time, we learned how the youngest victim, a 7-year-old boy, was murdered. And simply put, it was excruciating testimony. A warning, this is difficult to report. A forensic pathologist who performed the autopsy on the little boy took the stand today. He testified that J.J. Vallow was smothered to death. His killer put duct tape over his mouth and a plastic bag over his head. He also had scratches on his neck and bruising on his upper arms, signs he likely struggled and tried to remove the bag. We also learned today his 16-year-old sister Tylee's cause of death is homicide by unspecified means. Her autopsy was different. The pathologist testified that Tylee's body had been burned and recovered in pieces, so it was impossible to determine exactly how she died. Many autopsy photos were so graphic, the judge decided only the jury would view them, not the courtroom audience. A few jurors chose not to look at the photos. Some wiped away tears.
Hi. How are you? Not good. do not want to talk. I'm willing to listen if you want to talk to me. I just don't know what to say. I don't know what anybody knows. I've been in isolation for 2 weeks, so I don't know anything that's going on. I haven't talked to anyone. Well, they know that they found Tylee buried in a pet cemetery and JJ buried on Chad's backyard. And we don't understand how that happened or why. Can't talk about it. I don't know what to say, Lori. I mean, you know how much I love you and Alex, but it's just sick to my stomach. I didn't think anything would, you would ever let anything happen to the kids and just let them be thrown away like garbage. I can't take it to even let this. It's too painful. And you think I let that happen? Yes, I do. That's nice. Is there another explanation? I'm willing to hear it. I don't want to. Absolutely, but I can't talk about it. You went off to Hawaii and were dancing on the beach while your kids are in the ground? You had to have known when they were there. I just can't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand. I want to believe the best in you. I really do. I love you with all my heart. It kills me. But they were just little kids. I don't understand. Lori, if you let that happen to them and didn't tell us and left me in the ground like a piece of trash, then I don't know you because you would have never done anything like that. That's correct. And if you knew and didn't tell us, that's not okay. We love them. We would have taken them. We would have taken care of them. You could have gone off and done anything you wanted.
We heard from a pretty important witness on day 9 of Doomsday Cult Mom Lori Vallow's trial. So this is Melanie Gibb, and Melanie Gibb actually met Lori in 2018 at a church. She was actually with Lori at the conference when she first met Chad. When Melanie was on the stand and talked about this conference where Lori first met Chad, she said the two had a definite attraction right away, that they were extremely flirty, and she says they kept in touch after the conference even though they were both married. So Melanie talked a lot about Lori's beliefs, including the multiple probation that she believed in, which was that people could live multiple lives here on earth. She also talked about the rating system that Lori believed in, that it went from light to dark, and if you were light, you'd signed a contract with Jesus, and if you were dark, you basically signed a contract with the devil. She also talked about castings, which was basically having these kind of ceremonies that would cast out demons or spirits that were invading other people. She talked about the conversation she had with Lori about the night Charles was shot. So Lori told her that Alex had stayed the night because she was worried that Charles was going to come hurt her. So the next morning when Charles came to get JJ for school, basically they got into an argument because Lori had taken Charles's phone. I guess she claims that Tylee came out with a bat, and in that time somehow Charles got the bat, Alex went and got a gun. Charles supposedly hit Alex with the baseball bat, and then supposedly Alex shot Charles. She also shared that Lori was having an affair with Chad, that they would meet at hotels, that Lori was falling in love with him. She also made comments that she couldn't take care of JJ anymore because it was taking time away from her spending with Chad. So Melanie had gone and visited with Lori in September, and I guess Tylee wasn't there. And when Melanie asked, she claimed that Tylee was living at a school with roommates, but all of Tylee's items were gone. And when Melanie asked about that, Lori told her that they were in storage. She also talked a lot about the fact that Chad was basically living with her, but yet still married. And she said, why doesn't he get divorced? And Lori said, because it would ruin his standing with God. Around Christmas time, Melanie claims that Chad called her and said that the police were going to be calling her not to answer the phone. Melanie says she did ignore the phone call because she didn't know at the time what was going on. She said later on Lori called her and asked her to actually lie for them and say that she had JJ and that she was at the Frozen 2 movie. And she even asked her to take pictures of random kids in the movie theaters to give to police. Detective Nathan Duncan was on the stand as well. He had responded to Alex's 911 call after shooting Charles. When he got there, he said there was not much blood, and if someone had have done CPR on Charles, there would have been much more blood. He also said Chad called the mortuary lying about who he was, and he wanted to have Charles's body cremated as soon as possible and sent back to Louisiana. Hit follow for more updates.